It was a Saturday morning in early May, and the kind of light that filtered through the blinds hinted at a day too beautiful to ignore. The healing woman stood quietly in her small kitchen, a steaming mug of strong black tea cradled between her palms. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room, the rest of the apartment still in that soft hush that comes before anyone else stirs. Through the half-open hallway door, she could hear the steady breath of her son sleeping. His room was just a few feet away from hers in the two-bedroom apartment they'd shared since he was in middle school. It wasn't much, single floor, no yard, a third-floor view of a parking lot, but it was home. It was theirs. She leaned against the counter and looked toward the window, where sunlight began tracing the edges of her potted herbs. Her body still carried the softness of sleep, but her spirit was already reaching for open sky, for the hush of reeds and the hush deeper than rest, the hush that lived near water. Today she would not walk alone. Her youngest son, her gentle one, her protector in a quiet world, had agreed to come with her. In just a few weeks, he would walk across the stage in a cap and gown, off to start his own journey. But for now he was still here, still her steady presence. He had always been the one to notice when her hands trembled with stress or when the light left her voice. She had learned how to be strong, raising two sons on her own, but it was this one soft-spoken and grounded, who often reminded her she didn't always have to be. By the time he emerged from his room, rubbing his eyes and dragging a hoodie over his shoulder, she had the backpack ready and her camera battery freshly charged. "You sure you're up for this?" she teased gently, offering him a granola bar. "Only if we stop for a caramello on the way," he said with a grin. And they did. They drove out past the town center, windows rolled down, music low. The drive to the preserve had become familiar to her in the last few weeks, but today it felt new. Today she would see it through his eyes too. Their path led them first to the stream, a narrow channel veined through the trees, its water clear and cool even under the mid-morning sun. She crouched low to photograph the glint of water slipping over stone. He stood at the edge, pointing out tiny fish flicking through the shallows. "Turtles usually like that log," he said, gesturing to a half-submerged trunk. And as if summoned, a painted turtle was indeed there, warming its shell beneath the sun. The healing woman turned her lens and captured the moment. They wandered along the marsh trail, quiet but not silent. A red-winged blackbird called from the cattails. A snake, non-venomous and sleepy, slid silently across the trail and into the reeds. He watched it with curiosity, not fear. She had always taught him to observe first, to understand the language of the natural world before judging it. But it was the meadow that held them longest. They arrived as the sun crested overhead, light falling warm and golden across the wide open field. The grass had grown high, brushing against their shins, and the flowers were in full celebration. To stop them both in their tracks. The wildflowers had taken hold like a living quilt across the earth. Purple lupins stretched tall and watchful, goldenrod fluttered with bees. Milkweed stood with broad green leaves cupping early clusters of pink. Indian paintbrushes flared in fiery reds. Daisies, simple and cheerful, caught the breeze and bent as if nodding in agreement. She stepped into the meadow slowly, lifting her camera to capture the way the light kissed each bloom. Her son followed behind her, his arms crossed, taking it in with calm reverence. "How many kinds of flowers do you think there are here?" he asked. "Enough to make you forget how much the world demands of you," she answered. He smiled and crouched beside a patch of blue-eyed grass, not touching, just admiring. She took photo after photo. Bees buried in blossoms, the curve of petals against sunlight, shadows of stems tangled together like fingers. Her favorite was one she snapped when he wasn't looking, him leaning slightly into a patch of black-eyed Susans, his profile softened by gold and green. When they reached the edge of the field, where an old oak stood like a guardian, they laid out a blanket she had brought. They sat together for a while, shoulder to shoulder, drinking water, sharing the chocolate bar they picked up earlier. The caramello stretched with warmth between their fingers, sweet and slow. Overhead, the sky moved lazily, wide with drifting clouds. Grasshoppers chirped beneath them. A butterfly passed by, then circled back to land softly on his shoelace. She pointed and he held still, wide-eyed and wordless. "See," she said. "It knows you're safe." They spent over an hour like that, talking sometimes, resting often. He asked about her childhood. She told him about her first camera. They laughed about how terrible she was at baking. At one point she laid back, hands behind her head, eyes on the clouds. He did the same beside her. She turned her head and watched him for a long moment. In the meadow among the flowers, with her son so close and so near to becoming something more than her little boy, she felt something settle deep in her chest. It wasn't the peace she'd come looking for. It was something better. It was gratitude. For the flowers. For this day. For him. Eventually, the breeze shifted and the shadows lengthened. The flowers turned slightly with the change, their petals folding just a little as the sun began its slow descent. They packed up in comfortable silence and began the walk back through the meadow. She lingered one last moment, turning to take a final photo of the field in full bloom. It wouldn't look like this forever. But they had come today. Together.